Hey readers, welcome back to Reads with Room B with me, Room B. As I said in my Facebook post, I had some technical issues. So that's why I didn't release a chapter of Gumshoes last week. I apologize, and hopefully that will not happen again. I know I've stated this several times, but I am only human, and sometimes things happen. I can only apologize and tell you I will do better. Now that housekeeping has been taken care of, on with our read. Gumshoes Chapter 6, The Scene of the Crime. After school, Timothy and Stuart walked along the sidewalk towards Madison's house. Though they had never been to her house before, they knew what to expect just by the zip code. The neighborhood housed the town's affluent residents, from doctors and lawyers to the regional Emmy-winning meteorologist. If the 8 to 10 bedroom colonials were monsters, they would eat Timothy's and Stuart's homes, along with Gumshoe headquarters, and still be hungry for dessert. In addition to the large interior space, every home was enclosed by trees on 3 sides, which provided both precious privacy and amazing hiding places. Stuart batted a low-hanging branch away. "All right, Tim, here's the game plan. Don't speak. Let me do all the talking, and we'll be okay. I know Madison told us to go to her house after school, but we both know she just meant me. You two are like oil and water." "I appreciate your confidence in my ability to be civil," said Timothy. "But how about you deal with your fixation on Madison and let me worry about myself, okay?" "Are you trying to tell me to mind my own business?" said Stuart. "Absolutely." "Look at you sticking up for yourself, buddy. I like it. Point taken." As the Gumshoes drew closer, Madison's home rose over the horizon like a palatial estate. It dwarfed every other home on the already lavish block. Every inch of its white-paneled exterior glistened in the afternoon sun. The Gumshoes turned their attention away from the ostentatious house to the 3 lines of police tape forewarning all not to cross the path. Across the street from the house sat a squad car. 2 officers surveyed all comings and goings on the property. Stuart stopped in his tracks in front of the lush row of bushes which seemed to separate Madison's home from the neighbors. Completely bamboozled by the presence of police officers. "I did not expect that." "I'm sorry, you didn't expect that there might be police at an active crime scene. I think it's clearly evident that you are an idiot." "Please. I've read the East Willow Police Department's operations manual cover to cover 3 times, and it clearly states that after 12 hours of constant surveillance, the squad cars are dismissed and only required to perform hourly sweeps of the premises." "I'm surprised that you've read anything cover to cover." "I'm going to spit in your lunch tomorrow." "I'd like to see you try. Now, how in the heavens are we going to get inside with a police car watching every move we make?" "That is a good question, my friend." The bushes rustled, and a soft female voice emanated from within. "Maybe I can help?" "Ah!" Stuart leapt into Timothy's arms, wrapping himself tightly around Timothy's neck. Out of the rustling bushes stepped Madison. She laughed as she brushed the brambles off herself. "You guys are a couple of pansies, aren't you? I should have hired someone else." Stuart unwrapped himself from Timothy. "Please, if you could afford to hire better detectives, you would have. Plus, in order to hire someone, payment must be exchanged," Timothy said. "Touché, Tim," said Madison. "You're all right, you know." "Enough with this jive," said Stuart. "Let's get down to brass tacks. What are we doing here?" "Are you kidding me?" said Madison. "This is the crime scene. You're detectives. So, detect?" Yeah, about that, said Stuart. There's a cop car parked across the street, not to mention the icky gross stuff inside. Well, the cops are an easy fix, Madison said. Miss Bottoms from across the street just invited them to her place for a piece of her homemade blueberry cobbler. They've been drooling over it since she put it on the windowsill, so we won't see them for a while. Stuart looked back towards the police cruiser, and sure enough, the officers had vacated their post. Fair enough. How are we going to get inside, though, genius? Madison pulled a key out of her pocket and dangled it in front of Stuart. Hello? I live there, remember? But that's an active crime scene, said Stuart. Shouldn't we respect it? Seriously, Cream Puff, how doughy are you? Said Madison. What do you think we were going to do? Sit around and play Miss Mary Mac? No. Good. Then let's go. Madison snuck through the bushes towards the side door of the house, and in one swift motion she lifted the police tape, unlocked the door, and slid inside. And then she turned back to Timothy and Stuart and beckoned them forward. Stuart tried to follow, but his feet were glued to the pavement. Tim, old buddy, said Stuart, can you give me a little push? I seem to be frozen in fear. Only if you do the same for me, said Timothy. Deal. Madison led the Gumshoes through the ornate trophy room to the living room. Stuart and Timothy admired the collections of antiques as they passed, from Civil War muskets to Fabergé eggs, all encased behind thick, bulletproof glass. It was the fanciest room in which either of them had ever stepped foot. Stuart immediately noticed nothing seemed out of place. Clearly, Stuart surmised, if this were a robbery, every piece in this room would have been cleared out post-haste. As the trophy room opened into the main living area, the devastation became immediately obvious. Madison's description paled in comparison to the absolute destruction. An outside observer would more likely believe that a localized hurricane had blown through, rather than consider it evidence of foul play. The two front windows framing the doorway were smashed through. Both couches were toppled. The flat-screen TV had not only been ripped from the wall, but also sent flying several feet across the room. From the living room, the scuffle had moved to the attached kitchen. The faux marble countertops had been significantly dented, and 3 silver bar stools were bent. Magazines, once stacked 50 high along the length of the counter, now completely covered the floor. Stuart's eyes panned across the whole scene as he formed a mental picture of the attack. The victim had opened the cabinets along the back wall and flung the contents onto the kitchen floor, trying to slay down his attacker. Well, at least there's no lack of evidence. Bending down in front of the kitchen counter, Stuart picked up the magazine closest to his feet, Better Housekeeping, and half-heartedly flipped through it. Satisfied, he tossed it back onto the floor and perused numerous other magazines. He determined that there must be at least 37 different descriptions strewn about the floor, which ranged from news and celebrity gossip to garden and home repair. He flipped through another magazine, but the pictures and words were clipped out of nearly half the pages. How about you leave the bathroom? How to leave your bathroom spotless? Man, your father really loves magazines, but does he have to chop them up so much? It's hard to get invested in this article. Madison snatched the magazine away and laid it on the counter. They're not for him. Mr. Reed makes us go through all the magazines for stories and present a collage every month about what we find interesting. Typefaces, grammar, and general threads in the marketplace. And general trends in the marketplace. How is that journalism? Said Timothy. Well, I think it's fun and informative, said Madison. Dad's receptionist loves it too, because we always give her the magazines the day after I turn the poster in. Madison took a few steps towards the staircase. "Where are you going, Madison?" Timothy said. "They won't let me stay here for obvious reasons, so I'm stuck at my grandmother's. I just need to go upstairs and get some clothes. I'll be right back. You keep investigating." Madison disappeared upstairs. Stuart waited until he no longer heard footsteps on the staircase before he placed a hand on Timothy's shoulder. "Dude, this is way above my pay grade." "That's what I've been trying to tell you," said Timothy. "I don't even know where to begin." Stuart walked to an upturned coffee table with shattered glass face. "It's a shame. I bet all of this costs a fortune." "Well, I'm sure it costs far less than the mental anguish of being kidnapped." "True." Stuart bent down closer to examine the coffee table. He noticed a crimson discoloration glinting off one of the broken shards. Leaning in, he realized it was a speck of blood. "Do you have any evidence bags, Tim?" "Do I look like a medical examiner?" "I don't carry plastic bags except in my lunchbox." "You're the crime scene investigator, man. You're the scientist. I point out the evidence, and you back it up. Just go look in the kitchen for something." Timothy made his way into the kitchen, carefully tiptoed over any potential evidence. Meanwhile, Stuart crouched down on all fours and crawled towards the front door, his nose only a centimeter off the ground as he scanned the carpet for more clues. Before he discovered any new evidence, though, Timothy called out from the kitchen, "Stuart, you might want to come here." "I'm busy. Just bring any baggie. Sandwich, trash, grocery. It doesn't matter." "No, this is far more important than that," said Timothy. With a deep sigh, Stuart pushed himself up and walked into the kitchen. "This had better be good. You're ruining my process." Stuart entered the kitchen and immediately recognized what required his attention. A pair of symmetrical scuff marks that ran the length of the kitchen from refrigerator to the counter. Stuart reached down and picked a small piece off the floor with his nail and squeezed it between his hands. "Feels like rubber from the sole of dress shoes. Somebody was dragged out of this kitchen, which means that the fight must have ended at the refrigerator." Madison walked into the kitchen, carrying a small duffel bag. Stuart turned towards her. "What kind of shoes does your father wear?" "You expect me to remember that off the top of my head?" "Hold on." Madison ran to the closet and pulled out a pair of shoes. This kind." Stuart grabbed the shoes from her. "Patent leather with dark soles." "Yeah, that would do it all right." "Madison, it looks like your father was dragged from the kitchen back into the living room. The fight definitely ended along the back wall of the kitchen by the refrigerator." "That's good news, right?" said Madison. Stuart walked to the refrigerator. "Possibly. It just doesn't make any sense. There are no doors in this room. Why would he run this way?" "Maybe he wanted a snack," said Timothy. "In the middle of a fight, Tim? That's ludicrous." Stuart bent down and looked into the small silver space between the counter and the refrigerator. The small sliver of space between the counter and the refrigerator. Stuart could only see a glimmer from an object wedged inside. "Do you have a flashlight?" Madison looked up into the now empty cabinet. She looked down at all the magazines strewn all over the floor. Brushing aside some magazines, she had found the emergency toolkit under an issue of the Legalese, flipped it open, and tossed the flashlight to an expectant Stuart. Here you are. Here you go. What are you thinking? Stuart shined the flashlight into the hole. It's a jar. Something stuffed inside. Stuart reached out and grabbed the jar and struggled with all his might, grasping, clawing for every centimeter. The tips of his fingers grazed against the lip of the bottle. He tried squeezing his arm further into the hole, but the bottle remained just out of reach. Get me a knife or something, he shouted. Madison surveyed the floor until she found a spoon lying on the ground. She picked it up and handed it to him. This isn't a knife, said Stuart. What? They're dangerous. Stuart rolled his eyes and grabbed the spoon. He latched it into the jar and slid it, inch by inch, into his welcoming hand. Got it. As he tried to pull his arm out and examine the jar, he realized he had wriggled, smooshed, and wedged himself so tightly into the crevice that he was stuck. Uh-oh. He pulled as hard as he could, but the more he struggled, the more stuck he became. Help me! Madison grabbed Stuart around the waist and heaved with all her might, but even with their combined force, would not dislodge him. Before too long, Madison stopped wheezing and gasping for breath. This isn't working. I have a better plan. Madison released Stuart and made her way to the pantry. Stuart yelled in her direction as she searched the disorganized contents laying on the floor. What are you doing? Don't you trust me? Madison reached down and popped up with a bottle of olive oil. Ah, Timothy said, to coat the arm and reduce the friction. Very smart. Then why didn't you think of it? Stuart bellowed. Meanwhile, I'm stuck. Hold your horses, said Madison. I'm coming. She opened the bottle and poured it down the crack. It oozed and sputtered onto Stuart's arm. It's slimy. Gross. Madison finished pouring the liquid and snapped the cap into place. Quit whining and pull. Stuart heaved and his arm wiggled a bit. Hey, it's loosening, but I could still use a good pull. My pleasure, said Madison, wrapped her arms around Stuart. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Pull! They pulled with all their strength, and pop! Stuart's arm came free. He lost his tenuous grip on the jar, and it flew in the air towards Timothy's outstretched arm. Timothy almost caught the jar perfectly. Almost. It slipped through his fingers and bounced once, twice, 3 times on the marble floor. Madison, Stuart, and Timothy, eyes shut and fists clenched in preparation of the sound of shattered glass, heard nothing after the third bounce. Their eyes opened. The jar lay motionless and unbroken. Stuart crawled over to it. Good job, Butterfingers, he said to Timothy. Stuart picked up the jar and stuffed his whole face inside to examine its contents. As he inhaled, his knees buckled, and he became woozy. He fell to the floor with a loud thud, unconscious. The jar rolled out of his hands and across the floor as Timothy and Madison rushed to his side. Madison dropped down and wrapped Stuart up in her arms. Wake up! Wake up! What do we do, Tim? Is he dead? Timothy bent down and checked Stuart's vitals. He has a pulse, but we have to move him. The officers outside must have heard that. They'll be here any second to investigate. Sure enough, they heard voices from outside as the officers ambled up the front stoop towards the front door. Madison stuffed the jar into her duffel, slinging the bag over her shoulder before she grabbed Stuart's legs. All right, you take his arms. Timothy struggled to pick up Stuart's arms. He's heavier than he looks. Madison picked up Stuart's feet, and they carried him towards the trophy room as the officers began banging on the front door. We have to move quickly. These officers aren't going to be polite for long. They picked up their pace. Sure enough, The officers banged louder. Sir, you have 5 seconds to identify yourself before we break open the door. Timothy and Madison moved as quickly as they could to the side door. Madison clicked the door open, and they hustled Stuart outside as far as the front door. They hustled Stuart outside just as the front door opened and officers burst in. Freeze! Nobody moved, but there was nobody left inside the door. The side door had clicked shut a millisecond before the officers advanced to check the empty trophy room. Outside, Madison and Timothy dragged Stuart past thickets of bushes, down the street and away from the house. And that is the end of today's chapter. Like, subscribe, and share, and keep reading. Stay safe and be excellent. Thanks, readers. Bye for now.